You say, Sean?
Thank you for taking time to chat with me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
So, in the film, obviously, the two of you play father and son. How did you kind of go about building this chemistry and dynamic?
Well, for me, if I
Yeah,
go
you
first,
go first,
it
please.
was easy. It was easy. He's first of all, he was the boss, so you got to do the right thing. But no, it was really easy. It was one of the things that really attracted me to the script too, was that father-son relationship and the scene, that great scene. But I fell right into it. I really did. It wasn't hard at all.
I love this guy. Sean, I love this guy. I obviously grew up watching Tony Danza as everybody on earth did. When I got to know him, like I say, they say you shouldn't meet your heroes, but in this case, I'm really glad I have because he's just so kind and on the first day of a movie set, especially when you have somebody of Tony's stature and he walks in, everybody looks to him. They don't look to me. They look to him. And they see, how's this gonna go? And he immediately, that first scene, he just set the tone. He said that, he was in trusting me, he was in my hands, and and then everybody follows suit. And the shoot was great, and I give him great credit for that.
Well, thank you, Adam. It's very nice, but it comes to the top, as you.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned how this father-son dynamic relationship is kind of the emotional core of the film. Why do you think that this was such an important aspect of the story?
Well, I think they both have a little bit of codependency, and and um, I also think that if the theme of the movie is empathy, it's that's what they have. Is both of them have empathy for each other. I think it's obvious. It's obvious to if you watch the movie that they not only do they care about each other, but they sort of understand each other's predicament,
Yeah.
and I think that fosters more of a cohesive relationship that we sort of put together.
I mean, it's the very first thing we see. We see Jimmy by himself, but the very first thing we see him do is take the trash out for his dad, right? That's the very first action. And throughout the movie, he's doing these things, light bulbs, blah, 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 for his dad. And ultimately, I won't ruin the movie, but ultimately his dad makes a very selfless choice, you know, um, which which is in Jimmy's benefit, even though Jimmy doesn't realize it. And yeah, it's about empathy. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Danza, obviously this isn't your first project set in high school because you made Teach.
Yes, I
So
did. Yes.
of course you're not playing a teacher in re-election, but did you find this to be like a kind of like a full circle moment coming back to like this deconstruction of high school movie tropes?
Well, I think that's really kind of interest. That's what's interesting about it. It is like this throwback sort of movie to the days when we used to do these kind of movies. And I just thought that Adam wrote a nice script, and I like aside from the father son thing, I just like the idea that it shouldn't always be about you. Sometimes it has to be about the other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of my favorite lines in the film was during the debate when you're on stage and you're asked, what do you have to say to teens who might think that you're not up to speed on today's teens? So as an adult filmmaker who's making a film that's not necessarily about teens but involved teens, how did you kind of go about making sure that the film was in touch with today's youth?
Well, I was in talking to teens the whole time I was writing it. All my friends that had kids that were teenage year, I would ask them, "Hey, we used to go to keg parties." Like that, one of my friends with kids said, "We're not buying. Fam don't buy other friends beer or whatever they said." And so that was like a direct line. Like they don't do keg parties. I didn't know that. So all of these things that are in there were kid tested or high school tested all throughout the process. And then I sent the script to two different high school kids as well and asked them to read it and tell me which any things feel not real, and then they would give me a lot of notes. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And as silly and funny as the film can be, there's a lot of emotional like sensitivity and heart into it. Why do you think that it was important for the film to have this heart?
Well, I just don't think. I mean, that's why people watch movies. because they want to be, they're looking for a connection. And I think that's what he's provided. I think, the movie talks about a guy who thinks this moment could have went this way or went that way, and because it went this way, I'm here, and maybe I can change it. And I think that's not something that's too hard to relate to nowadays. For a lot of kids, not only Jimmy's age, I think, and younger.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think we get caught in this, like I say, we get caught in this prison of self. We get caught in just thinking about ourselves. We get caught in thinking about what could I have done? Why did they have that? That should be mine. Instead of thinking about them, and if you start thinking about, and again, this movie's about politics too. Again, in public service, it's about serving the public. In this case, the public is the high school. So if you want to serve the public, you got to learn about social media on down. You got to learn about everything because you're representing
learn
them.
about the public.
You got to learn about the public that you're serving. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned how this is also like a political satire in a way. It's set in this world of high school. It's something that obviously we've seen done by like Election,
Yeah.
Alexander Payne's film. Why do you think that this setting makes for like such like a good microcosm for these themes?
Well, because it's I don't want to say harmless, but I want to say it's less threatening. It's less threatening. We're not talking, there's all these cultural touchstone issues that if you even bring it up, then all of a sudden, everybody's rankles get up and everyone's pissed off and everyone takes their position, their fighting positions. Is that the right fighting position? Golden Glove boxer. But if you can keep it in a high school where everyone's a little bit more innocent, then people can kind of go along for the ride. And maybe think about the exact same things you wanted them to think about if you'd done the hard-hitting documentary version of it. But in me, and also just who I am as a storyteller, I have a kind of a light sort of way. I'm like I want it to be fun. I want people to have fun. I don't want to tell the genocide story. I want to tell the light story, and then people can think about, oh, maybe I don't want to go kill somebody. You know what I mean? So,
and I think it's a better way to make a connection again with the audience. I think it just, makes it easier for the audience to connect with the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that in a way, this like sub 90-minute comedy is a bit of a lost art. Why do you think that this genre is still so effective?
I don't think it ever was ineffective. I think for whatever reasons, just, people far above, me in a totem pole made decisions that they wanted to base things on IP or on comic books or whatever else, and probably that made a lot of money, and I'm sure it works for their business model. But in terms of like story, just actual story, I think a lighthearted 90-minute comedy still is just as effective as it ever was.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
Oh, well, I agree. I'm thrilled about how this movie's being received. It's because, like I said, it is a throwback, and I'm a throwback. So, we got something in common.